everybody. I'm Ethan Evans. I'm here with Rajat Agarwal. He's someone I haven't met before this call. Volunteered to share some of his challenges in public. Let me help him with them. So I'm going to do that. So with that, Rajat, welcome. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for the opportunity. It's great to be here.
All right. So, tell me a little bit. I know you work at a company called Front. I don't actually know anything about Front. I have the information that you manage a team of about 23 people, that you have a director title there. Tell me a little bit about your company and what you do, just briefly.
Absolutely. So Front is a SaaS company that creates a tool for customer operations. So fundamentally, you can think of it as a team of support agents that need to manage incoming volume. We allow the inbox to be a multiplayer experience, fundamentally. So that's what Front does. I personally have been there for about 2.5 years and mostly involved with product engineering initiatives. And I started out in a core product experience and then have migrated through multiple teams and currently in the last year and a half mostly focused on AI with an intention to go back to multiple teams in the near future.
So I missed something there, and it's my fault. You have 23 people working for you. That's less than you've had in the past, or what does multiple teams mean there?
Yeah, so the 23 people is at its peak right now. In the last 3 months, I've been very, very focused on AI, and it's been about 6 people there.
Uh-huh.
But in the past, I've fluctuated the team size depending on whatever the company needs.
Got
Uh,
it.
and so right now, I have 6 folks, but then be expanding to back to about 23, 24 over the next 2 months.
Okay, and that's a sure thing that's going to happen. It's not speculation.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
in transition right now. That's right.
Okay, cool. Got it. So, I of course, this is common in coaching for everybody else. Uh, Maybe not always, but I ask Rajat, tell me what you want to talk about so I can think about it in advance and kind of know what your questions are. He sent me some questions, but I don't want to read from that list because maybe his needs have changed, or maybe he wants to express them their own way. So, Rajat, how can I help you today?
Yeah, I think particularly, I think the biggest challenge that I've faced over the last, I'd say, year within the company is communication, especially upwards to executives. I find that it's quite a bit different than communicating with peers or within your function, even. And essentially it's about getting the right level of abstraction, if you will, for the executives to fully grasp what I'm trying to convey. I've been involved with the Zero to One initiative around AI, and so that's been a particular focus around that communication.
Okay. So, you feel comfortable generally with your ability to communicate in your job with peers, with direct reports. You haven't had a problem, but in the last year, you're struggling to communicate with executives above you in your current company, and you think that may be in part topical, that you're working on a 0 to 1 initiative. Do I have that about right?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
So, side note for everybody, a skill you should all use. I just was using reflective listening, which is I listened to what Rajat said, I rephrased it, and then I verified with him that I had understood it correctly. So there's two reasons to do that. One, I really do want to know if I understood him. Two, that is a part of communication. A great way to communicate is to figure out, did I understand you correctly? And a great way to test that is, can I say it back to you? Because if I missaid something, hopefully Rajat would say, well, that's partly right, but you missed this, or I want to include that. It may prompt thoughts in his head, like, oh, that isn't the whole story I wanted to share. So I have two questions. Why do you find yourself communicating more to executives now than in the past? Or is it that you're not communicating more, it's just that it's gotten hard? Like, which thing is it?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think it's more about more communication rather than it being harder. Fundamentally, because this is a strategic initiative for the organization. And so I've been required to sort of lead that. And as a result, I'm responsible to make the communication happen on how that's going and where it stands. And so that's fundamentally the difference.
Okay, got it. Now, when you're doing this communication, are you mostly communicating with technical leaders or non-technical?
It's a mix.
It's a mix. Where have the problems occurred? Like, obviously, you're coming to me because you want to change something. I know you said it's an abstraction. That's your perception. What's actually, has someone told you you're a poor communicator, or that they're not getting what they need, or is that just your belief? Like, give me a little sense of why you believe this is a problem.
Yeah, I mean, primarily because what I found is a couple things. One is I'm not able to get the point across as crisply as I can. And then the second is I think the questions that I get back specifically tend to be tend to indicate that essentially the point hasn't landed as I expected it to. So it's more about the feedback, indirect feedback that I'm getting around the communication.
Okay. Well, that's good. It's good in the sense that you're thinking about it, but it's also good. I want to take a moment and just observe. You have a couple positive things going on here. Number one, you're working on a strategic initiative with more executive visibility. That's good, right? From a career viewpoint, that's good. Second, while you may feel you're struggling to communicate, and no doubt you are struggling to land your point, no one's yet complaining about it.
Mhm.
So we're catching this early enough that it's not like, oh, we got to get Rajat off this. That guy can't say what we need. We don't follow him. So that's
Mhm.
good. We're working on this is the ideal point to work on a problem where really, to be honest, you're noticing it and you're taking proactive steps. If someone had complained to you, then that would be more of a reactive step of, oh, well, now I have a problem. So good for you.
Thank you.
Um, I'm curious, when you need to make these communications, how often are they spontaneous or in the moment versus how often do you know that you're going to a meeting or you need to communicate on a cadence? How often would you say you're being surprised with the need to articulate versus it's coming?
Yeah, for the most part, it's about knowing in advance. But I'd say about maybe 10-20% of the time, it's about spontaneous communication or in person on my feet communication.
So I figured that would be your answer, but I wanted to let you answer. So given that, the next sort of obvious question is, um, you have the chance to prepare. Now that you've noticed this problem, how much have you started for the 80 to 90% that is coming? Have you started preparing for those meetings by thinking through or asking yourself, how am I going to express this?
Yeah. I actually spend a fair bit of time on that when I'm drafting any responses or any written communication. The question that I tend to ask myself is, what are they looking for? Like what is important to them that I need to get across. And usually, I think where I find it hard is sometimes I don't fully grasp like what is that important thing that they're looking for, and that's when my communication doesn't quite land that piece. What I found sometimes is I partner with my boss who is very helpful in this area, and he tends to when he looks at this and writes it, it tends to be a lot more clear, even to me when I'm reading it again. I'm like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. But how do I get there? I think is the part that I find a little bit harder.
Okay. Do you feel that you're making progress in learning from that process with him, or that? And by the way, don't feel compelled to answer yes here. It could be that the no answer is, I keep seeing what he's doing, but I can't figure out how to emulate it. So where are you on the like practice is helping versus no, I'm really stuck?
So I have mixed signals on this. So one signal is that I still feel when I look at what he writes, I don't feel like I'm making much progress. But I've received feedback from other folks that I'm getting better in my communication. So there's a bit of a mixed signal in this, and I'm not quite sure how to weigh those.
Yeah. Yeah, and I don't know, is you're the only one who can give us data on that, so I'm not gonna rush to try and interpret. Um, we don't always know. We always our perceptions are not completely trustworthy. So when you're working on your own performance, you have to deal with the fact that like we get in our own heads about it, and we're critical, and we have imposter syndrome, and we have overconfidence. You just have to sort of deal with that. Okay. So uh you I'm glad you're preparing, because when you're struggling with something and you have the opportunity to prepare, that's the best thing you could do. We could ratchet that preparation up. For example, you could not just prepare, but then run it by a test audience. In a sense, you're already doing that if your manager is rewriting some things, but you could test it on a peer, you could test it on a spouse, right? When you're working with a non-technical person, you could, if I can explain it to a family member or a friend who's non-technical, and they're like, yeah, I got no idea what you just said, that's different. So we could practice it more.
Mhm.
Um, the other thing you could do is you could spend some time on trying to figure out where is it, what's causing the gap where you don't know what the other people are going to be interested in. So that's more understanding where they're coming from, understanding the strategic business. Of course, ideally, you could ask them. Um, that can be awkward. You don't want to be going to every stakeholder before every meeting and saying, well, tell me what you hope to get out of this meeting. What you can do, I talked about reflective listening. What you can do is some reflective telling, which isn't a thing, but I'm making it one by creating a term. Reflective telling in this sense would be, you share what you have, and then as opposed to just saying any questions, uh, you can say to them, you know, um, are there any areas or any concerns you have that I haven't addressed? You can just ask a little bit better question to guide their questions or get them to give you context. You might also ask someone and say, I'm going to try and answer that for you, but could you take a moment and tell me why that matters to you? Like, you can even be honest and say, I try when I make these presentations to anticipate what you may need to know. I think I missed something here. Help me understand why that matters. Um, and there is even a role. Well, let's take a step back. You've been at the company a while. How well these executives that you're presenting to, do you feel generally comfortable with them? Like, it's a good company, the people are generally honest, you're not managing a bunch of snakes.
Yeah,
That,
yeah, yeah. In general, like the culture is great. I think people are generally quite kind. And I think the part that I think to the point that you're making is around relationships. I think for me, I haven't quite like I'm getting better at the relationship building with peers and execs, but I'm not quite there yet, I think. So part of I think the communication feeling better is about the relationship also getting better because they interpret my stuff with more confidence and trust, I feel, versus I'm coming from a place that they're not quite aware of, right? So I think having that familiarity has helped me a little bit over time because I get the sort of implicit trust before they read something. But I think that's something that I'd like to get better at. Like if I was to start a new initiative and get started on that, like how do I build that quickly? I think is a piece that I'm not quite sure of.
yeah. So confident vulnerability may sound like a contradiction, but it's not. Confident vulnerability, um, I've, I've, I've assumed that you're mostly presenting to the same set of people over and over as this project goes on. Is that right?
Yes.
Perfect. So an opportunity you have is just to take 2 minutes at the start of the next meeting and say, hey, one of the things I'm working on for my own development and to help you is to try to be a better communicator in these meetings. Even though none of you have complained to me, I have the feeling that sometimes I'm not covering all of your concerns.
Mm.
I'd like to do a better job at that. So either in this meeting or after it, or anytime you have feedback on how I can better communicate to you, please let me know.
Mm.
And this does a few things. It's a very powerful tool. Number one, it's actually a confident move to say, hey, I know I'm struggling with this a little bit, or I feel like I am, and I'd like your help.
Mhm.
B, I'm trying to serve your needs. So help me help you.
Mhm.
And C, I'm open to feedback. Like if you've been sitting on something, I'm asking you, I'm inviting you to share it because a lot of people are maybe like, oh boy, that guy's tough. But hey, he doesn't work for me. It's not my place to tell him. Or, you know, and so those uh now those different things all tend to show executive self-awareness and will tend, if you don't do them too often, to raise your status. Now, what do I
Mhm.
mean about too often? You don't want to be running around to executives everywhere in your life all the time saying, well, I don't really know what the hell I'm doing. Please help me. That
Yeah.
that is not a power move. But if you're generally competent and you're part of a company where people generally know you well and think well of you, or at least think neutrally of you, say, hey, I have this growth area and I'd love your help. And by the way, I'm trying to grow in it to help you. Most people respond positively to that. And
Yeah.
so that's a uh, that's a powerful move that may also get you some feedback that will help you understand where they're coming from.
Yeah.
Um, the thing you can do on your own is what business front is in, and you
Mhm.
probably know or can find out what are the major company goals in terms of financial goals, market goals, et cetera. What are like what is Front's theory of business? What value does it believe it's adding to the market? And key, what does it hope AI will add to that?
Mhm.
And that may be poorly defined, right? In other words, a lot of companies right now don't know what they want from AI. They're just scared not to have some.
Mhm.
And they're like, oh, we better have some AI because it seems like everybody's talking about it. Um, I don't know where they are on that. And so um, helping untangle some of that in your own mind and then asking questions, because ultimately either few possibilities, either Front has a clear AI strategy and they're looking for you to meet it. And do you understand that or not? Or actually, they don't have a strategy, but they just think they need some.
Mhm.
Or possibly the real truth might be Front shouldn't be wasting so much time on AI.
Mhm.
I don't know, but you need to know and you need to find out what they believe. Do
Right.
you feel like you understand that? Where does
Yeah.
AI fit into Front's strategy?
Yeah. So I think this is something that has evolved over time. So for us, I think things were a bit more exploratory last year. And I think that's certainly starting to solidify a bit more in terms of a concrete strategy at this time. And so part of my challenge actually was around that because I felt like I was put in a place where I had to clarify what it should be. But at the same time, in terms of the standing or trust in the company, I wasn't there yet in that my word would be fully trusted on some of these things, right? So how do you put that forward in terms of building credibility quickly enough to actually convey that, okay, here's where I think we should be going. Here are the possible risks to that approach. And sort of get buy-in from the organization that, okay, we need X more time to kind of build further confidence in this path or like choose another path. So I think that was a particular challenge that I encountered.
So building credibility quickly isn't, there's so much to that. And you're right to ask the question in that it's an incredibly important skill. There's no single answer to it. Let's talk about a few tools. One tool is if your boss, who seems to be an ally, has more credibility, he can loan some of it to you. So he can introduce you and say, Rajat is the right person to lead this initiative. I picked him because of this and that. I'll be working with him, but I think we can trust, like, I encourage you to tell him what you need and trust him to figure it out. So you can ask your manager to loan you credibility. The second way to build credibility quickly, essentially the way we build credibility, which is also called trust, is very simple. It's say what you're going to do, then actually do it. And because that cycle takes time, what are the things that increase that trust? Well, one thing that increases the trust is that you do more than is expected, meaning I have some expectation of a director of engineering, front probably does as well. You over deliver. So they're expecting you to do this research project and you're giving them deeper insights sooner than they thought. Over delivery is one way to earn trust. In other words, let's take Amazon, which I'm sure you know very well. They try to make their customer service very, very good so that if you have a customer service problem, it gets resolved very quickly and at no cost to you, usually, so that you feel like, oh, okay, I can trust this company. Like, they're very easy to work with. They over deliver on customer service. That builds trust. Another way to build trust is a little more opportunistic. Crisis. So we know, to take an extreme example, that often people who have been in combat together, even if before they went into combat, they didn't particularly like each other or had no commonalities, they come out of combat bonded across race, culture, socioeconomics. Why? Because in the end, I'm put in a position where I need to trust this other person with my life, and they need to trust me with their life. And that wipes away all these other things that might come between us. And so the rich man and the poor man are lifelong friends. And now you can't create, nor do I wish for you, a life and death combat situation. But I exemplify this. You earn the key element you can extract from this is my trust in you goes up when I see you doing something that costs you.
I see.
In other words, let's take me as an example in this case. You have a lot of trust potentially in my advice because of my reputation, but it's not actually costing me very much to coach you. Clients sometimes call me at inconvenient times, my coaching clients, and sometimes like they know I'm on vacation or something, but I take their call and I try and help them when they're in a crisis moment, even though it may be very inconvenient for me. That builds trust faster than what I'm doing with you. Because here, for everyone else's knowledge, he was sent a calendar link of times I chose to be available, and he got to pick one of those times. But basically, Rajat is coming here on my schedule. That doesn't really build a lot of trust that I give a damn, right? It's like, well, I'm available. You show up when I say, maybe I'll help you. Doesn't build nearly as much trust as, oh, hey, I have a crisis at work. I'm calling you and you pick up. I know you're whatever, busy or with this concern, but you're still taking time for me. that builds a lot more trust.
Mm.
So when you ask how to build trust, there's a few things that do it. Delivery, delivering quickly or well in a crisis moment in a business context. And as I said earlier, this sort of vulnerability. The strongest traits that are going to encourage trust is someone who's highly competent and yet humble and helpful.
Mhm.
That combination, you kind of have to ask who's not going to like that, right?
Mhm.
Usually.
Mhm.
Because if you are able to be competent and yet open to getting better, that's pretty ideal in an employee. Um, the last part here, and it's a good relationship building thing, is relationships are built in part on personal connection. You
Mhm.
only can get so deep on a business level. I was talking to another group yesterday, and long ago I've shared this before. For you and for everyone here, uh, there's this guy, Arthur Aaron, and he did some experiments. They're now quite old, the 70s or 80s, that showed how two people can get to know each other to build trust in each other. And he came up with this set of 36 questions that escalate in self-revelation. Um, and so the first of those questions, so that everyone has an example and you do too, is it's personal information, but it's not threatening. And the question he asks, or has his subject in this experiment ask, is if you could go, and we'll just do it, Rajat, as an example. If you could go and have dinner with anyone in history, alive or dead, who would you love to have dinner with? It's a magic. You're going to get to have an evening dinner with anyone from history, alive or dead. Who would you like to have dinner with?
Good question. I don't know. I'd probably pick Michael Jordan, but I think there's a question there that I've been asked before, of like, would I like to meet my heroes? And I think that's a separate conversation. But yeah, if I have to answer that question honestly, it would be Michael Jordan probably.
Yeah, which is fantastic. Thank you. So I would answer the question. My go-to answer, and apparently it's a common one, is Jesus Christ.
Mm.
Because hey, what a great way! Like, is there a God or not? Was this guy his prophet or not? I don't know. I can figure this all out over dinner.
Yeah,
Because for one thing, if my dinner request comes back as no such person exists, then I have information too, right?
that's fair. Yeah.
So, but now we know more about each other. And yet that question, so what's the actual thing going on here? You can't build a relationship with people by sticking only to business.
Mhm.
You have to decide what of your personal life are you going to share? Because if it's only business, then you're an API. I program you, you do what I want, you program me, I do what I want. There's nothing, we're just machines. You've got to inject some of that, and you don't have to, overshare, but being a little sealed up box doesn't work either.
Mm.
Um, so how to build, you've talked about building those relationships. They take time. That's a few ways to go about it. I want to make sure, because I know you had other questions, not to just dwell on that. Do you feel you have enough to give you some tips on communicating with executives?
Yeah, I think just one last follow-up question
Please.
on the around you mentioned exceeding expectations as a way to build trust. I think in this particular scenario, for me, the expectations were quite vague and unclear because it's more of an exploratory exercise.
Yep.
So I'm curious how you set those expectations in the first place to be appropriate and then exceed them.
Yeah. Well, you're setting a meta expectation, right? You're setting the expectation of, look, we're exploring. in an exploration, I can't tell you where we're going. I can only tell you the process I'll use to get us there and how I'll communicate along the way. And so here's how I'm going to manage the exploration. Here's how often I'm going to check in. You know, here's where I think we're trying to get from a business value viewpoint. I don't know what that's going to look like, and so I'll keep you informed. You know, you can't. You're right. I can't set reliable expectations for the unknown. And of course, people do want that. Oh, I don't like that it's unknown. The best thing you can do is name that it's unknown and say, here's what I hope, but that's not a commitment. And here's how we're going to try and clarify that so we can get to a commitment. But then it is about, as opposed to setting expectations, it's about managing expectations. Those two words are related, but you see the difference. So,
Thank you. Thank you. That's super helpful. I think we can go to the next one.
okay.
Next question I had was, um, as I start to go up in hierarchy, I think there's a particular question that's on my mind around keeping myself engaged with the right level of detail on a daily basis. Because as the org grows, it's very hard to be in every detail. So how do you pick and choose the right level of detail to be engaged with so that you're not spending nights and weekends trying to keep up with everything?
Yeah. So it's a great question, and it's one that, again, just looking at the limit case, we have to let go of knowing details to some level, because if I end up running a team of 5,000, I can't know what each person in the 5,000 is doing the way I would when I run a team of 5. It's sort of obviously impossible. So then what do? Two things are the best recommendations I can give you. First, you have to teach the people under you to funnel the information up to you. You have to just explain to them, look, I'm paid to know what's going on in our team that matters, but I can't audit all of you, nor would you want that. Me coming to your cube every day and asking, what did you do today, would drive everyone crazy, including me. Instead, I need you to think about, here's the kinds of things I need to know. Something's on schedule or off schedule. You've made a new discovery, either good or bad. You know, we have a emergent customer problem. These are the kinds of things I need to know. Funnel them up to me. And the more you funnel them up to me, the less I'll bother you. So you're training your team that it's a pyramid and they have to do their part to funnel information up the pyramid. And it has to come from the lead, not from you asking. The second thing, though, is audit. And audit, there's two ways to audit. The first one is when you see a problem or think you see a problem or have this sense that there might be a problem, trust that sense and go ask questions. And so good leaders go really deep when they sense a problem. They also sometimes go really deep when they don't sense a problem, but they know a particular area is critical. And again, they are teaching the leaders under them to also have this auditing behavior of, look, you can't be on every possible detail, but I need you to learn how to audit. And if you think there might be something, dig into it. What a lot of people do is they get involved in either hopefulness or busyness. And they have a sign that something might be wrong, but they're either hoping it's not, or they're allowing their busyness to keep them from auditing, and that's usually a bad idea. The last place, I just, Jason, maybe you can share this in the chat. I just posted a video from a woman named Molly Graham a couple days ago. It's a TED Talk, so it's short. Molly talked about how she's cultivated becoming a professional idiot. One thing that causes people not to audit when they should is they're afraid of looking uninformed. Like, you're the director of engineering. How can you not know this? So they're afraid to ask questions of an engineer, in your case, for example, because you might look dumb. Like, how can you not know my work? Her point was, I'm super willing to be a professional idiot and look dumb, because I've realized that, like, that's actually a superpower, to be willing to just ask and ask and ask. So you manage your time by getting your people to mostly filter things up to you, but then you go be a professional idiot whenever you need to, and you just say, look, I'm sorry, I have a big team and I'm not as up to speed on your area as I'd like to be. Explain where you're at. And if you
Mhm.
have to, this is extreme, but say, explain it to me like I'm a 3-year-old.
Mhm.
Start
Mhm.
there.
Yeah.
Don't be afraid to do that. That again has to do with that. Remember, I talked about confident humility.
Yeah.
Confidence is I'm not worried about your judgment of me.
Mhm.
Humility is, yeah, I actually don't understand your area. I wish I did, but that's why I'm here. You're going to teach me now. Explain it to me. And then, that blend of confident humility works incredibly well.
Mhm.
Um, right? Confident arrogance or overconfidence would be, wow, I know your area. I know everything in my team. That would be wrong.
Mhm.
And humility without confidence is also not a positive trait. That's where you end up talking to someone and saying, oh, I feel really bad about this. I don't really know what I'm doing and I feel lost. Can you tell me what's going on in your group? Well, that doesn't look good either,
Yeah. Yeah. For
right?
sure.
See, you're looking for that middle of, hey, I know what I'm doing, but I don't know your area exactly. I'm out of date on it. Update me. That's
Mhm.
confident humility.
Makes sense.
Um, Look, this will be a lifelong battle because every time you go up a level, you have to let go of more detail.
Mhm.
And yeah, it's very unsettling because it will happen that something will go wrong in your team and you'll get surprised by it and it'll be a disaster. And then you just have to get really good at disaster management. And I wrote about that in Business Insider yesterday of, because that story, which I'm sure you probably know, others know, I had this launch for Bezos that cratered.
Mhm.
And it cratered because an engineer on my team had built something that didn't work. He was 3 levels, 3 levels of hierarchy. I was the director, there was senior manager, there was a manager, and then there was this engineer. The engineer missed something. Should I have reasonably known that? Well, no. But the argument in the company, which I kind of agree with, is I didn't have good process to prevent it.
Mhm.
Nonetheless, I got surprised by something that I wasn't protecting against.
Mhm.
And then I had to clean up that mess, and it cost me. Get good at cleaning up
Mhm.
and get good at having people believe that you will clean up.
Mhm. I see. I see.
Um, okay.
Makes sense.
Other questions on that
Yeah.
topic?
Yeah, actually, I had a sort of a branch question on that, which is around you started out by talking about how you gotta groom your leaders to funnel information up to you, and part of that is around succession planning that I wanted to like branch out on and try and understand what's the right approach to making that happen, where you're preparing them to take up more responsibility and like emulate your behavior or even better in cases where they need to replace you in the future. I'm curious about any tips or guidance around that.
Um, well, I believe the only way to both grow yourself and to have a sane life is to create a team that can do your job without you. At
Hmm.
least at least your daily job. And so I'm always driving towards that. And the way I drive towards it, yeah, you've probably seen my magic loop stuff.
Yep.
I drive towards it by, the magic loop when I write about it is mostly written from the viewpoint of what can you as an individual do to engage your manager.
Hmm.
But the magic loop can work the other way where the manager can propose it to someone and you
Hmm.
can go to people on your team, potential successors and say, look, I would like to grow your career and grow your capabilities and groom you for more opportunities here. But that needs to be a two-way partnership. And it begins with understanding what would you like to do? What do you think you would like? And then working down the path of, okay, well, in a magic world, I could just hand out gifts, but I'm not actually Santa Claus.
Hmm.
How eager are you to work towards that versus how much are you at a place in your life where you just want to do your job and go home? Either
Mhm.
one is actually kind of fine. I just need to know where you are.
Right.
And then you work with them on either path they're on, because it is okay to have some employees who just want to do their job and go home.
Mhm.
But you need some employees who want to do more and take on difficult, scary, ambiguous things.
Yeah.
And so you just have to work through that. Those are the people I make my successors.
Mhm.
It's the people who step up. Uh, some people will never step up. They've taken away the lesson in life that life is like high school. And the question is, how do I get the highest marks with the least work and then skip school when I can? Right?
Mhm.
Some people will always step up because they're super ambitious and driven. And then there's a set of people in the middle that will step up if they feel safe and supported. You're trying to work only with those last two categories. The set of people who will never step up, you're either using them if they're useful or trying to get rid of them.
Mhm. Mhm.
Um,
Makes sense. Got
and that's just, I'm sure I'm oversimplifying. And there are these people who philosophize and believe that every person has a great performer inside them and it's the manager's job to find that. I don't agree with that.
Mhm.
Uh, you know, maybe in some magic world where I had unlimited time, but I have goals to meet. And
Yeah.
so, uh, I'm not sort of here to drag other people through life. Um, and so, for everyone who's listening and for you as a coaching client, one of the reasons I love my job is the audience here plus you are interested in self-improvement, right? The thousands of people who aren't here are the ones who aren't interested, and I'm totally okay. Don't want them here.
Yeah.
All
That's
right.
great.
Did
Great.
that answer your question?
Yes, that's great. Thank you. I think we can go to the last question then, I think, which is around specifically planning career and how to invest appropriately in the right roles. So specifically, what I mean to say is, there's the obvious dichotomy around like public companies versus private companies, and smaller companies versus larger companies. And I've personally been fortunate enough to get a lot of growth in the smaller companies, but at the same time, the financial return tends to be always dicey in that. So I'm trying to figure out like how to balance that appropriately and like, the questions that come to mind: how do you identify the right company? When do you decide to move on? How do you do right by the company by always like making sure they have the right heads up when you're trying to make career decisions as well?
Yeah, well, great questions, but I would say you're starting too late down the question chain, at
Mm,
least, or I need this information, which is the first question answer is, where are you going?
mm,
Meaning, what is your life goal? Your life goal can change. So maybe life goal is too big, but what do you imagine? What is most important to you right now? Is it growth? Is it stability? Is it money? Is it challenge? In some magic world, we all want high growth, complete security, dramatic intellectual challenge. You know, we want all these things. Okay, that's probably unlikely. So
mm.
when you think about what really matters to you, where are you going and what's important to you?
Yeah, so I'd say like I think when I think about that, I think what's important to me at the moment is a bit more financial stability with some growth. So if I was to prioritize between the two, I'd say financial stability would be higher than the growth. Um, but like not far behind, if you will. Like I'd be willing to make some trade-offs, but not like too much.
Yeah, well, so while it's not perfectly true, um, financial stability normally comes more from bigger businesses than smaller because they have more resources. And within bigger businesses, they come more from existing profitable lines of work than from speculative lines of work.
Mhm,
So
mhm,
again, since I know Amazon well and it's a well-known public entity, AWS is a wildly profitable business that people are going to need compute resources for a long time.
mhm.
So Amazon's a big company. Amazon has done a lot of layoffs, but I don't think any of those layoffs have really come from within Amazon Web Services. except maybe within that, small products that were experiments. But like
Yeah.
they're not laying off people who work on, say, EC2.
Right.
So if you want stability, you can go a place like that, but the growth is going to be slower because those, while I was at Amazon, it grew roughly 100 times.
Mm.
It can't do that now. It's physically impossible. If for no other reason, to give an example, it employs 1.5 million people now. Well, it's not going to employ 150 million people. That would be the entire adult working population of the United States would have to work for Amazon. It's not going to work out that way. That makes like a great dystopian novel where we all work for one company, but that's not, it's not going to work that way. So the growth can't be the same as I had. That's where you can find safety. There is another way to find safety. The other way to find safety, and maybe you do the one and then do the other because they can be sequenced. What's another way to find safety? It's to know that what you do is so desirable that 5 companies will hire you tomorrow morning. Right? So if we take Sam Alston, CEO of OpenAI, he has this kind of security because someone would hire him away from OpenAI, not maybe for as much money, but he can have a job somewhere else tomorrow morning. Google would love to have him, right? Even if they just put him in a room and ask him questions, they'd love to have him. VCs would love to give him money if he wanted to start something new. How do you do this? Well, number one, you have to think about having a very valuable skill set. But number two, something you hear from me a lot is build a network. So I don't know this for sure. I can't prove it. But using myself as an example, because I have the large network that you're all familiar with that brought you all to me, if I published on LinkedIn, okay, I'm ready to come out of retirement, I'm looking for an executive role, who knows roles, who knows people I should talk to, I would be drowning at least in leads. Now it's up to me to go earn those jobs in an interview, and probably people would ask like, well, you haven't been doing this for 4 or 5 years. Are you really ready? You've called yourself retired. There'd be questions I'd have to answer, but I could get the lead. The more you build your network, the more you have security. So that's a different way. That allows you to go take higher risk jobs. Then the more you have a skill set that's high value and the more you have multiple options, that also gives you the chance to get the highest pay. Because let's ask, when you went to Front, how many job offers did you have on the table when you took the Front offer?
4.
4. How did you pick?
Yeah, so I stack ranked what I wanted to do for the next like 2 years, and the biggest thing that I needed was a bit of a bit of more balance in my life in terms of work and life, and then also in terms of the pay. I was looking for something that was reasonably placed, but not at the top of the line. Like I would love the top of the line, but if it comes a trade-off of having a work-life balance, then I wanted to pick the work-life balance essentially.
So did you have any offer that paid more that you turned down?
I had 2 offers that paid more.
So bloody good for you. Well done. You're living your life right. Not that taking the highest paying offer is bad, but you were willing. Most people struggle to make that choice. They really struggle to choose life over money. But I'd honestly say here, I don't think you have a problem. In other words, you were able to get 4 job offers. That wasn't a particularly good time in the economy. You're working on AI, which is a hot topic now. But my actual point is, the way to have some growth, some good pay is have lots of offers. You literally had a sliding scale where you could pick what's the balance of lifestyle and money and growth I wanted. You're actually, you're more of an example than someone who needs coaching. Just do what you did, but with confidence, and keep building your network and your skills so So it's not that next time you want 8 offers, next time you want 4 better offers,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Makes sense.
4 is enough, but it's funny. I'm sure there are listeners here now and in the future who are like, oh my God, I would die to have 4 engineering leadership offers. I can't get one.
Mhm.
Your overall, as I've said, we began this call with me appreciating where you were at in your career. You're working on a high profile initiative. You're going to have your resources increased. You're getting exposure to executives. You're telling me that the last time you needed a job, you had 4 offers. Your life's actually going pretty well.
Mhm.
I might encourage you to tolerate a little more risk. Well, let's ask this. Have you ever been laid off?
I have, yes.
Okay. I'm sure that wasn't your favorite experience, but on the scale of like, well, that kind of stuck to, oh my God, that was the worst time of my life, where does it fall for you?
It was not bad, to be honest. In fact, I had an offer when I got laid off, so it was actually a pretty good experience because I ended up getting severance where I wouldn't have otherwise.
And I've done that too once. I've also had the other experience. Um, Probably your next layoff, if you have one, won't be as good as that one, but they're very survivable. And so I might encourage you, let's put it this way, you'll never be a great large leader without taking career risks.
Mhm.
It seems like you have a pretty good set of cushions. I might encourage you to get out on the end of the risk a little bit and jump up and down on the end of the branch and see if it breaks. Because it turns out evidence suggests there's a trampoline under it for you. You're going to bounce back. Now, you ask how to prepare your company. Well, I have 2 things to say there. Number 1, developing your successors is how you prepare your company. And number 2, pardon my French, is fuck your company.
Mhm.
And what I mean by that is your company isn't going to come to your funeral,
Mhm.
right? A couple of reasons for that. Number 1, companies can't.
Mhm.
They're things, not people.
Mhm.
Number 2, if your company hit financial hard times, they're not going to bankrupt themselves to keep you on the payroll,
Mhm.
right? We never see it makes the news because it's so rare that like a whole company bands together and says, you know what, we don't want to do layoffs. So everyone here, as opposed to firing 20% of the people, we're all going to take a 20% pay cut and stick with it. That
Yeah.
never happens.
Mhm. Mhm.
So you have friends at work and they're friendly and they're nice people, but they're not going to be there for you. And so
Mhm.
you have to ask yourself, Steve, companies tell awesome lies and they're lying to themselves when they say it. They're not, I don't believe they're malicious, but they tell you we're a family and we're all in this together. Yeah, right until they don't need you anymore.
Mhm. Mhm.
And it's not malicious. It it isn't. It's just they're deluding themselves. They're telling themselves we're going to be there for you because they believe it, but when push comes to shove, they're like, well, actually we're not. You just
Mhm.
have to know that. And so, yes, try to be a great professional and take care of your company, but take care of yourself first and
Mhm.
be okay with that. Be
Yeah.
okay with saying, I know this is an awkward time to quit, and I understand some of you humans here may be mad at me. You may even feel like you would never work with me again. Hopefully,
Mhm.
it's not that bad. But I only have one life to live, and I'm going here because that's a
Mhm.
better life for me.
Right. Right.
And you can be nicer about it, of course,
Mhm.
but just do right by your company, but don't mistake the idea that your company will remember you
Mhm.
in 5 years. They won't,
That's fair.
right? And you know, other other people in your life will.
Mhm.
I love to work hard for companies, um, but you have to understand the deal. You work hard at a company in the end because you're working hard for yourself, and the company is the vehicle.
Mm.
Not you can believe in the company's mission if it's a mission you believe in, but then again, you're working for the mission, not the company. It's
Right.
they're still the vehicle.
Mhm.
And I don't think, see, in America and probably in a lot of the world, we try and tell people that the company isn't a vehicle, it's a home. And it's not.
Mhm. Mhm.
Because we don't kick people out of our homes
Yeah.
just because they're inconvenient.
Right.
If
Right.
if we did, I'd have fewer children.
For sure. For sure. Yeah. Makes
All
sense.
right.
It's helpful.
Uh, any last questions?
No, I think you answered all of them. I really appreciate the time. Thank you so much for this opportunity. It was great.
All right. Well, look, it sounds to me, one thing I find with people is they don't foresee their own success. Um, it's actually going to be impossible for me to make you overconfident, but I want to at least make you comfortable. You seem to be doing very well. You're asking good questions. You're investing in yourself. You're having good opportunities. You're in a hot space. Yes. Can I see where you can do some work to improve your communication skills? You're a classic candidate for working on executive presence.
Mhm.
And, if you haven't read one of them, consider either of the two books titled Executive Presence, one by Sylvia Ann Hewlett and one by Harrison Monarth. They're very different takes on executive presence. They're sort of complementary. You're at the stage where you need that, and it can really help you. But
Yeah.
you're on the track where you're going to get whatever you want. Um, I
Great.
also would bet, let's ask another question. If you lost your job, this is a personal question. You can decide not to answer, but I challenge you to answer anyway. If you lost your job tomorrow and had to live off your savings until it was all gone, how long could you survive?
Probably a few years.
Yeah,
Yeah.
which doesn't surprise me at all. That's incredible safety.
Yeah.
It's incredible safety. And I know it doesn't feel that way, but you're on track. How old are you?
38.
Yeah. So you can do what I did. No problem. You have more money in the bank at 38 than I did,
Mhm. Mhm.
right?
That's it.
You're lined up for a really great life. Believe it. Yes, you still have to do all the hard work,
Mhm.
but you maybe can worry a little less because I've walked your road and you're further down that road than I was. So
That's it.
go enjoy it.
Great. Thank you. And thank you for the recommendations on the books. I actually have one of them that I was just starting to read yesterday. So the Executive Presence book. So I'm gonna continue down that journey for sure.
Which one did you pick?
The first one that you mentioned, it's
Monarch?
yeah, that's right.
Yeah. It's a really good book. Um, it's dry. It's a little painful to get through, but it's a little bit like reading, I don't know, an O'Reilly book. It's got
Yeah,
all the right information. It's not a page-turning novel.
for sure. My last book was Designing Data-Driven Systems, so this I'm sure is about the same, and I'm happy to
Well,
read.
it's probably better than that, right?
Yeah, for sure.
All right. Well, it's really been a pleasure. Thank
Yeah,
you
same
so
here.
much.
Thank you. Really appreciate it.